cloud, still there. Richard asks Zed what he can do to get rid of it. And Zed's like, awesome idea. We will totally do that. We have to get a little bit farther away from Chase's house with his wife and his kids. Which, considering what happened over at Zed's house, probably good idea.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, really good idea. If I were Chase, I'd appreciate the fuck out of that, especially after being told that story.
Yeah. Like, oh, it burned down. Yeah. Yeah, let's not.
In fact, I'm surprised that wasn't a consideration before Chase agreed to leave. Like, hey, he's not going to do that twice, is he?
I mean, probably why his wife was, like, less smiley the next day. Because she probably talked to him while they were getting shit ready all night. And he was like, oh, yeah, Zed's house burned down last night. She's like, what the fuck?
That's the other thing it didn't tell you. They did get everything done. She just couldn't sleep that night because she was terrified that her house was just going to blow up.
Right. God damn it. I have to make a pack for them and for us because we need a go pack for tomorrow because shit's going to go down for sure.
Well, they're kind of lucky that she did take the time to pack all their shit for them because they had everything they needed that night. They rode until long after dark before they made their first camp. And then after that, the land became like a little less familiar. And he'd never been this far south. But even so, you'd think if he was that far south, he'd be near a border of some kind, and he might have a general idea of what's that way. He's a woods guide. He'd be able to traverse it.
Yeah.
He just may not know exactly where he is.
Yeah, because he seemed pretty comfortable in the upper bend when he was there before. So this is obviously something totally different.
Right.
And he is paying close attention to what's going on around him, though, which is good. Generally, that's a good thing to do.
Eyes up, noob.
Every so often, Chase would get off his horse and stare into the darkness, and occasionally he would hand the reins of his horse to Zed and take off into the woods. This last time, he comes back and he tells them that the wolves have been hunting, and he has to go bury something that they've killed. To continue going, not to stop, but don't fucking run. Keep to the road. Which I would hate.
Up until this point, Chase has kind of been the guy who's the protection. He's the muscle. Which Richard has a magic sword. Okay, that's not nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Zed, wizard's fire. Definitely something. But even he's an old man, and those guards did sneak up on him.
And he doesn't even have a knife, apparently.
Yeah, no knife. Zed does not need a knife. Zed can fry motherfuckers. But he's not infallible. Chase is the guy who is super keen. He's super used to the woods, combat, traveling, protecting people, all the stuff.
All the things.
Oh, I see what you did there. Shameless plug. So when he takes off, you'd be like, well, I don't like that.
It's dark and...
Yeah, you would be super frustrated when he just left. Like, you're supposed to be here.
Yeah.
So, as he rode away, Richard saw him reach for his short sword. That sounds dirty, but it is not. So he knows that Chase was fucking lying to him. Richard didn't like letting him go off alone, but he decided he needed to trust his judgment because this is a guy who knows his shit. And just like we were just literally saying, it makes him uneasy. He doesn't like the fact that he's out there, probably because he's fearing for Chase, whereas we would be like, something's going to get us.
Yeah.
Because Richard is a better person than us combined.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what's going to make me feel safer tonight?
What's that, JD?
Taking a beer break.
Yes! I do like this part of the show. This week, we are drinking Nutter Your Business Peanut Butter Stout by Grand Armory Brewing. Now, what's so cool about this one is that it's the barrel-aged version of it. I first had Nutter Your Business when Jade and I went to go see a poet perform locally, a guy by the name of Neil Hilborn. I noticed that they had a bunch of craft beer, so I just went through the list and landed on this peanut butter stout, and I was like, oh, that's gotta be good. So I got it. It was a slam fucking dunk. And it's been a staple in my mini beer fridge ever since. So the fact that this one was barrel-aged, I had to try it because I haven't had the barrel-aged version of it before, and I am so happy that we got it.
They also make a Mother Smucker.
Yeah, Mother Smucker.
We got both of them at one point, shortly after that poetry reading, and we mixed them together. And it's like a peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah, it's really, really good. It says, we took our signature peanut butter stout and ramped it up for you. The peanut butter aroma meshes with the vanilla accents, complemented by a rich mouthfeel. Hints of bourbon add to the complexity of this barrel-aged beauty, and goddamn, I agree.
It is good.
So we're going to take a quick break, and we will be back right after this.
And we're back. So Richard decides he needs to ride to Kaylin's left so that he can stay between her and the boundary. Which,
He feels protective of her.
Yeah, he's got to make sure she stays away from it, and he's first in the line of fire. He keeps the reins in his left hand to keep his sword hand free because he's already so super adept at having a sword.
Fucking smart.
Unless as a woods guide, he is already like a swordsman.
The more I think about it, it may be part of his job to protect the people that he's guiding through the woods, and so he might have to fend off thieves and stuff. Maybe he has done a little bit of sword fighting.
I feel like woods guide would be like bow and arrow prone, knife prone, but sword is like a weird thing. And he notices that Kaylin's hand is near her knife too, so it's pretty safe to assume everybody's on edge here.
Right. They're just waiting for something to happen. Plus, with Chase being gone, I think they are all on high alert now because that was their plan too. I'm going to rely on Chase to protect my ass. And then Chase left. And right here, the chapter kind of plays to the fact that everybody is super on edge because suddenly they hear something shrieking from out of the dark. And it's loud, and it's fucking with the horses, and Richard has to struggle to keep his horse from bolting, which is a really serious problem. If your horse panics and you're on it, you are along for the ride, or you can risk jumping off, which is probably just as dangerous, I would say. But on top of that, Chase also told Richard to not let the horses bolt, that it was apparently important that he not do that. So he struggles, and as he does so, he can hear the shrieking in the woods, and Richard starts to want to turn around and go help his friend, which was also expressly forbidden.
Right, he just like sits there and stares into the woods. And Zed and Kaylin have to be like, come on, man. Let Chase do his job. He knows what he's doing. One person's life is not worth the Seeker stopping his mission. Chase knows what he signed up for. This is what he does every fucking day.
And he did pledge his life to Richard.
Right. So he would rather fall in the line of duty than have Richard come back for him.
And even though Richard knows that they're right, he just hates to admit it.
Right.
Which, it's kind of a through line in this book that Richard uses logic, and he's not too proud to be like, I'm the fucking Seeker, you're wrong. Earlier in this chapter, he was kind of admiring the irony that even though he's their leader, he's still following these three.
Right. Kaylin tells him going back to help isn't the brave thing to do. Going on when you want to help is.
Right.
Which is a hard thing to grasp when that might mean that one of your friends ends up getting killed because you leave them to that fate because you have to keep going on.
Yeah, he doesn't want to have to think that he did nothing on purpose and his friend got killed.
Right.
That puts it on his shoulders as far as he's concerned.
Right. And he throws this question to Kaylin when she starts challenging him a little bit. He's like, what if it was you? What would you want me to do? And she's like, I would have you go on. Like I've said this whole time. I'm here to guide the Seeker and to put my life on the line for him. And that pisses Richard off even more because he doesn't want her to think that he would leave her like that.
Yeah, he doesn't want anybody to think that he might run.
Even if he does want to run, it's not even that shameful of a thing because he's a regular woods guide. And you know what? It's okay.
Yeah.
If you just want to keep going, the Seeker has bigger things to do than to be tied down with this grief over your friend when he's just going to turn it into a story. that might even be partially true.
Yeah, it kind of makes you wonder what kind of stories Zed has told Chase at this point to make him have that kind of reaction. Like he's going to turn it into a story, and hey, maybe even a little bit will be true. This guy seems like he's capable of some pretty amazing shit, and if even he's making up stories, then what kind of wild rides is he taking people on?
Yeah, it's that fun paradigm of really unique looking dude that you're sure has to have some stories, but you're also sure that most of them aren't true. So it's kind of like, it's interesting to listen to him because you never know what he's going to pop out at you.
So like, it's interesting, but take it with a grain of salt.
Or like a handful, whatever.
Yeah. So after a time, the shrieking sounded further and further away. And Richard wasn't really sure if that was good or not. And he asked himself if he'd be able to tell Emma that Chase died, because that's kind of what he's assuming at this point. They got him. They're moving away from where his friend is, dead somewhere in the woods. And his other two friends just talked him down from going back and helping him. And now he's dead. And now he's like, how the fuck do I tell this guy's wife that he's not coming back? And he's feeling the weight of that. And that's unbearable. You've been the seeker for 10 minutes and somebody already died. I'm not trying not to laugh, but he would obviously believe that it was his responsibility that Chase died because Chase was coming with him on this journey.
Right. He wouldn't have been down there if it wasn't for them. But then he followed that up by chastising himself for doubting Chase. And I personally have felt a lot of that. Like I struggle with a little bit of anxiety now and then. Maybe. And in the summertime, you tend to ride your motorcycle to work and back and all over, and that makes me anxious. I understand the whole chastising yourself for doubting. I have to do that to myself sometimes. I'm like, no, don't be stupid. He'll go slower if he needs to. He's not trying to be an idiot.
This is true.
Yeah. Just like with Chase, you've done this more than once. You know what you're doing.
So at this point, Richard also didn't think he had ever been this close to the boundary. And in his uneasiness, he looks back at Kaylin, who kind of gives him a reassuring smile, which I'm sure he needs at this point.
Richard grew up with a boundary. Now, maybe it's just a rebellious kid in me, but I feel like I would have thrown shit into the boundary.
Like this rock, I'm gonna huck it in there and see what happens.
Yeah, like I can't believe that at almost 30 he's like, this is the closest I've ever been to the boundary. Because I feel like, I mean, I get there's boundary wardens, you were warned about it as you were growing up, but we would have like sat on the edge of a mountain somewhere and been like, all right, see if your stick can make it in.
I could see that being a thing.
You live in Westland with no magic and like no technology. What are you doing?
I know people throw stuff into Niagara Falls all the time. Hell, people even go down Niagara Falls all the time.
Yeah.
So I could kind of imagine that if this is just a normal part of everyday life, it would probably be an attraction of some kind. If people never saw magic before, it would definitely gain some attention and some... He's like in his 30s, we're assuming, but yeah. Some 8-year-old kid picking up a rock and then looking back at the boundary like, I could make that shot.
Or like 14, 15-year-olds, after sneaking some of Dad's wine, we're all going to go up to Lookout Bluff and huck stuff off the top after getting a little buzzed.
Until that first creature came out of the boundary and they're like, oh shit, let's get out of here.
Yeah, and then one of them actually dies and they're all traumatized forever.
Oops.
Yeah, whatever.
Well, that's why, kids.
And things like that are probably why Richard doesn't like traveling in the woods at night.
Right.
But he has a realization that if they had to sleep in them, it's going to be even worse. So he keeps moving. Not running yet, again, but you got to just keep moving forward, you know?
Right. Always keep moving forward. And they kept moving forward all the way up to a small wooden bridge. Now, this was a weird part in the chapter for me. I don't really understand it. I know you don't really understand it. But they come to this bridge, and Richard's like, something's weird about the bridge. Let me check it out. And he goes underneath it, and he finds that the pins have been removed. He's like, well, we're going to have to get wet. So he